Hello, I hope you're all having an amazing first few days of 2020. I'm so excited for the new year, but it also scares me a lot. I don't know why it scares me so much. I think like just lately life has been scaring me, like the future and shit. But I want to talk today about the books that I read in December. I know I'm late on my uploads, but it's just because I've been enjoying life, you know? It happens, hopefully, to you too. As I'm not at home, I'm not going to be showing most of the books. I do have a few of the books here, but the first book I want to talk about is Monstrous Volume 2. This is a fantasy comic book, and it's so cool because it's an epic fantasy, but it's comic book form, and I think that's so awesome. I've never seen like fantasy been done on this big scale. I've seen it been done in sci-fi a few times, but we're not in fantasy, and I think it's so inspiring. To me, the world is a little bit too complicated and a little bit too big, and I feel like because it was a while since I read the first one, like it's hard to get into the world again, but I do highly recommend it. I gave this book 4 stars. It was definitely better than the first one. I love the whole backstory you got about in this one. It's basically about this girl who has some sort of demon inside of her, and everyone is trying to like capture her because she's dangerous for like the future of the realm, and it is so complicated. There's so many different clans. There's these cats who are like necromancers, and they have 3 or plus tails, like they have many tails, and I think those are like my favorite characters. There's like chimera in this world, and it's just this whole battle between like humans and non-humans, and it's just very interesting, witches and stuff. And then this one you got a lot closer to the relationship she has with her mother, which I thought was really interesting. So it's definitely better, but I'm not like floored by it. The second book and the last book that I read this month was Endymion and the Rise of Endymion. This is the 3rd and the 4th book, this one, in the Hyperion Cantos. And so this novel, or these books, are taking place, I think, almost 300 years after the first 2 books took place. So it's kind of like different main characters, a different world. It's about this main guy called Rise of Endymion, and he basically gets sent on this mission to protect the daughter of one of the main characters in the previous books. It is such an epic. I've never read this much of an epic sci-fi, and after this, like, it's so hard to live up to because it's just so complex, and in a way I think it's a little bit too ambitious. Oh my god, I don't know how to, like, I think I like the second Hyperion Cantos book the best, and I do like maybe that more because the world isn't that much explored. You definitely get like all these cultures and all these characters, and this book definitely made me cry. The ending was so good, and it just wrapped everything up so nicely. I do think that the book promised a lot, especially the 3rd book, that it didn't really live up to. Somehow all these things that he had to do on the mission somehow got solved, but it didn't get solved in like an epic sort of way. It just kind of like solved itself in a way you wouldn't predict, but it was nice. The only thing I have that is a complaint about the series is that the author goes into so many things that are not important for the series. He can go on for like pages explaining how there's this basically police who has risen up after the last books called the Pax, who basically control everything, and they are in league with the church, and the church is so corrupt, and it's just so insane. Like, I don't understand how there's nothing left of what Christianity is in this book, and I think maybe we should have gotten more of the backstory, but it's so hard to talk about this book because there's so many elements and it's so complex. It is also so good. I gave it 4 stars because I really liked it, but there are some pages where he goes on about like who was pope before that pope, and then that pope was before that pope for like 10 generations, and it doesn't even involve the story, and you're like, stop this. Why are you torturing us? Also, something I want to say, in this book, it's the longest book. It's 700 pages, can you imagine? It's definitely the longest book in the series, and I did need to listen to the audiobook when I was completing this because it was just so slow at times. But the audiobook is really good, and I do recommend it if you're doing the book alongside with it. I can't imagine doing only the audiobook because the story is so complex. I've said that like a million times. The only thing that bothered me is like the way he pronounces certain words. Like the main character's name is Rise of Endymion, but I would pronounce it Rise of Endymion, And it bothers me because I read the first book without the audiobook, and then he pronounces the other main character Ania, but I would pronounce it Anie, and it messes with my mind a lot. Really good, and if you're up for a challenge, but also a very rewarding one, you should definitely read this. I also love the new kind of, I don't want to say magic, but like magic, and how the androids have developed in this story. I find that really interesting, and how it kind of branches out from humanity. It's all very interesting. I definitely recommend reading it because I don't want to spoil anything. It's obviously the third and the fourth book in series, and I should move on because we're already 7 minutes into the video. After that, I read Wayward Sons by Rainbow Rowell. It's the second book in the Carry On series, or actually it's called the Simon Snow series. It's basically like a retelling, the first one at least is a retelling of Harry Potter, but in like a very comical way and a very young adult way. And I thought it was fine, and I also read it during like a booktubeathon setting, so I definitely flew through it. This book, the second book in the series, was so bad. It was so bad, you guys. I was just like, as I was starting it, I just wanted it to end. And I'm laughing because like I rarely read books I just hate. Like, it had no motive, there was no storyline. It was literally like the author just wanted to write something in this world with these characters and just came up with this plot that had nothing to do with the first book. It just had the main characters, and now they're going on a road trip in the USA, and it was just so weird. Like, the only thing I like about the story is how the magic, like the spells, derive from sayings that humans have, or like things that humans say a lot. So, and humans have to exist for the wizards and magicians to be able to do magic, which is, I mean, and I find that interesting, but literally that's the only part. This was so bizarre. And then they meet this character, like this guy who's like knows about magic and stuff, and he's just so weird and he doesn't fit into the story. I don't like his character arc. It is literally just so bad. Like, can we just move on? I don't want to talk about this book anymore. After that, I finished Death Note, so I read Death Note volume 11 and 12, and I was told there was this whole like plot twist coming, and the plot twist was good, but very anticlimactic. I definitely find it interesting, like whole Light's path, like his character arc, because he ends up being so crazy, and you realize how far he's gone and how like fucked up his mind is, and that it is not a sustainable thing that he's doing, and he doesn't see it himself. But it's just so crazy the way he reacts at the end and how the ending is resolved. It makes me mad. I don't want to say that. I don't want to spoil anything, you guys. I don't want to spoil you. As a whole, I do recommend Death Note, and I think it's a really good manga. And I know I sound stupid to those people who think like Death Note is like a classic within manga, but for me it isn't. So if you want to try manga for the first time, definitely check out Death Note. It's so worth it. Light, man. I guess I feel kind of stupid that I didn't catch on the ending and the plot twist, if you know what I mean. After that, actually I have the books for everything after that because I took them with me. The next book that I read is Saint's Blood by Sebastian de Cristel. This is the third book in the Greatcoat series. This follows basically it's kind of like Three Musketeers, now I'm thinking about it. Why haven't I never realized that? Ah, okay, I'll come in a minute. So you follow these three greatcoats, which are basically protectors of the king's law. I've never explained that well. Why? I guess that went so well. Let's continue. And all the realm is basically against them, and somehow they always end up having to save everyone from the duke's stuff, from the saints, from all of that. Oh, this is called Saint's Blood. That does make sense. So this, I think, was not my least favorite in the series, but it started so slow, and I think it was because I ended up reading it really slow in the beginning. I didn't have a lot of time to read, and I think this whole series really has to be read quicker for you to love it, but when you love it, you love it. It is so good. I love it so much. I have never seen relationships been done so well. Like the love story I guess you could say, between the main character and his dead wife is just so deep, and it makes me cry every time he talks about it. It's just amazing. The characters are like, has so much depth, and they're so complex. Like there's things you realize you didn't know about them, but then when they say, you're like, yeah, that's exactly how it is. Their friendship is beyond anything like these three dudes. And I do really love how in this story it got a lot more evolved with how the magic works. Like the main character really doesn't like magic and he doesn't want to be involved with it, but in this one they really got to explore like why the saints exist and who the gods are and how the magic is passed on between these two entities. And that was just really interesting. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars at least. I recommend this whole fantasy series. I think it's amazing. Next, I listened to the audiobook of How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran. I have read How to Be a Girl by Caitlin Moran when I was way younger, before BookTube, and I really liked it. It's really bizarre, and this is basically a book about feminism and also a biography, so it's kind of like combine it. So at times she goes on rants about certain topics when it comes to being a woman, and that's why it's called How to Be a Woman. And it's just so like out there, like it's very vulgar in the way she expresses herself, but she also narrates her own audiobook, and I think that just amazing. Like she really puts a lot of personality into it and herself into it. So definitely recommend that. It almost sounds like a podcast. So yes, listen to the audiobook. It's so great. A lot of the things that she talks about is really funny and I can relate to it so much being a woman. There were some things that I didn't completely agree with, but of course it is a point of view thing. I am also a feminist, so it's not that, but minor details. You know, okay, this might be too specific. You know, if you've seen Friends, you know this scene where Chandler goes to a theater and none of the other people come, and so he sits there and he watches this woman have a monologue or like a theater performance, and she starts the whole thing by saying, Chapter 1, my first period.
Chapter 1, my first period.
This is that play and everything that follows, you know? Because the chapters are basically like that. If you are a girl, I think you should read it. It's not really for men because there's like so many things that you wouldn't be able to relate to, but if you want to understand how it is to be a woman, maybe you're interested. And the last book I'm going to talk about for today is The Crimson Crown by Cinda Williams Chima. This is the last book in this series. I finished this series. I finished both the Hyperion Cantos and what's called the 7 Realm series this month. I'm so excited. This was a great conclusion. Did I give it 5 stars? It is very possible. I'm gonna check. Alright, I gave it 4 stars, but still, it is such a good conclusion. The whole anticipation with the main characters at the end. Did I write a review? I feel like I wrote a review. What an epic conclusion. Sure, I have some problems with certain things in this book, like the fact that they never feed the starving dog, even though I assume they did, and that the ending was a little cliche and a plot twist sort of like a telenovela. But at the end of the day, this was such a page turner and a romance to die for. Of all the YA fantasy I read, this one really sticks out as the one to read. Thank you, Wilma, for writing that. That really helped. I've read a lot of young adult fantasy, and a lot of them just feels the same. The characters feel the same, and I feel like this one really sticks out. And if you're going to read one young adult out there, I think it should be this one. I have rated young adult higher, but this one just feels different. The story is different. I guess the plot twist is a little cliche, like I said, but the romance is really good. The world, I guess, is good. I wish kind of that the other realms would either play more of a part or less of a part, because the balance seems strange, but I did talk more about that in the previous book. Yeah, I mean, I think there were some characters that was very anonymous, and it was kind of unnecessary to have them in there because they were just like name dropping people that they have met in the previous books just to like end the conclusion, but I don't remember who they were really. They were an important part of the story. I don't remember much more than that, but I do recommend this series. I think I give all of them 4 stars, but it's very solid, very solid. So those are all the books that I read in December. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and comment below what books you guys read in December. I wish you all the best of 2020. I hope you had a great December, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!